Today's video is sponsored by Squarespace. We're going to kick things off with code styling with this article, Write Swift Like Apple. Now, if you're a junior developer, these kind of articles and this Airbnb style guide that I'm going to get into in a little bit are just paramount. You have to read these because you don't know things like how you should title your booleans, right? Like, is paging, is user interaction enabled, is refreshing, etc. Or, prefix it with has or should. And there's all these little things like if you name a variable, avatar URL, should the URL acronym be all capitalized or lowercase? There's all these little style things that make your code consistent, easy to read, easy to understand. Actually, Airbnb touches on the main goals here, right? It makes your code easier to read and begin understanding unfamiliar code, because one of the hardest things is coming into an unfamiliar code base and trying to wrap your head around things. A consistent style makes your code easier to maintain, reduce simple programmer errors, reduces the cognitive load while coding, that's a huge one, and it keeps discussions on your diffs with your teammates not about the style, right? Everyone knows the style they're using with the style guide, but you focus rather on the code's logic. So whether you're a junior that doesn't really know what style they should be using, definitely read this. Or if you're a senior, it's still always good to revisit these kind of articles or revisit the Airbnb style guide. For example, don't include types when they can be easily inferred, right? Swift has type inference. So a classic example is here we say, let sun, and then you say it is of type star, and then you initialize it star with the initializer, right? Just say let sun equals star. It's easy to infer that it is a type of star. But again, here's Airbnb style guide. There's tons of suggestions for how you should style your code, because I do need to say, like, Swift has a style guide, Airbnb has a style guide. There is no one way that you must write Swift code. So there is a bit of opinion and subjectivity here, but there are some best practices you should stick to. And again, whether you're senior or junior, read through this Write Swift Like Apple, read through the part 2, read through Airbnb style guide, because if you're junior, you need to know this stuff. And if you're senior, you can always pick up some new tips to make your code more readable and maintainable. On February 3rd, which is just a couple days from now, the Swift Student Challenge will open up. Now, we've talked about this in previous episodes of Swift News, so that's not really the news. Hopefully, if you are a student and you're going to partake, you knew this was coming. What I wanted to share this month, aside from just a reminder that, hey, we're only a couple days away, is the experience from Fancy Goose, or Lena here. She shares her firsthand experience of participating in the Swift Student Challenge for many, many years. I think she did, if I scroll down a little bit, from like 2019 all the way to 2024. I assume this spanned like high school and college. Maybe not, but it's a lot of years. But she was lucky enough to win in these couple years, right? 2021, 2022, and 2024. And she won a ticket to WWDC last year. So if you are a student thinking about partaking in this Swift Student Challenge, I highly recommend it, and read through Lena's article going through her experience on what it was like, because she also got to present one of her projects to Tim Cook here, as you can see on the right. And then she gives some personal tips if you want to participate. Be creative, which she says is a pretty generic one, of course, but one that I particularly liked was try to use a new framework or feature. Apple loves that, even like on our indie apps. If you're using a brand new API or a brand new framework, Apple loves to feature that kind of stuff. So read through her tips. And again, if you're young, I highly encourage this, because I'm always so impressed seeing what the youth of the world, the teenagers are building, because I know when I was a teenager, all I cared about was just beating my friends in GoldenEye on N64. I didn't care about any of this stuff. So I'm so jealous seeing what these young kids are building and just how their future is going to be set up. Like I wish I would have done that at 18. But anyway, if you're thinking about partaking in the Swift Student Challenge, definitely read through Lena's article. Moving on, we have an article from Jacob Bartlett, a tech interview that doesn't suck. And long has the tech interview been a topic of debate. Many would have said it's been broken for years, maybe even decades. But it's tricky, because one type of interview is not going to work for every company. There's a little bit of nuance there. The typical long tech interview for Google and Apple probably isn't going to be applicable for like a small 5 to 10 person startup. So it is tricky, but Jacob does highlight some good points. First of all, hiring is hard. Damn hard. And this one I really liked, because I've basically spent my career in smaller startups, and it is, the smaller the team, the higher the stakes. And that is so true, right? If you have a team of 15 iOS devs and you hire the 16th and they weren't that great, or maybe they're a little toxic or whatever, you can survive that. If you're one iOS dev hiring the second one and they're not great or toxic, like in the worst case, that could almost make a product fail if you hire the wrong person, they're toxic and they don't get along. Maybe the original dev ends up quitting because of that. Like, it can spiral out of control. So yes, the smaller the team, the higher the stakes. So in this article, Jacob goes on to say, here's a tech interview that doesn't suck. Here's a good interview. And I actually agreed with what he came up with. He says, what makes a good test? For the candidate, it needs to be brief, not overly stressful, and give me the opportunity to demonstrate my skills. Of course, I think everyone would love that. For the interviewers, it needs to effectively test for the skills needed for the role and allow us to appropriately level the candidate. So he goes through the type of tests, and this one hurt. This one hurt bad, but he says, let's get this out of the way quickly. In the age of ChatGPT, take-home tests are a massive waste of time. Be better. And I used to be a huge fan of the take-home test. I even have a course all about the take-home test. I agree with him. That's a shot to my heart. It used to be a great tool in my opinion, but yeah, in the age of AI stuff, you're not really getting much signal by giving a take-home test there. You need to say theory interviews, have their place, but that's more for senior. But that kind of leaves the live coding exercise to be the only game in town, as Jacob says. But now there's two kind of coding tests, right? You have the fundamental coding skills, which would be the elite code. And Jacob argues, and I agree with him, that doesn't really give you much either because, you've probably seen it in your real life if you've taken one of these kind of interviews. If you've seen that type of problem before, or you've done that as a practice problem in elite code, you're probably going to succeed. If you haven't seen that type of problem before, well, then you might not do that great. I mean, that's not an absolute fact, but that is typically how it goes. So really, you're only testing for, has this candidate seen that type of question before? And the second one is to test for aptitude in the day-to-day work. And I like what he came up with here. The tech test that he came up with, and he goes on, this is a pretty long article, he goes in depth on what that test should be. So if you are giving interviews and you're curious about that, definitely read through the rest of the article. And if you are the one trying to get hired, right, you're looking for your first job, this article is still a very good read because you're getting the perspective of the person that's doing the interview and what they're looking for and what they're trying to get out of the interview process. So it's very valuable for you as well. But I loved his test idea, so I wanted to share this article. It's I found the most accurate positive hiring signals to come from live coding exercises that closely approximate day-to-day work. My favorite format looks a little like this. Here's a very small code base. There's some stuff wrong with it, so we will pair program for an hour to make it better. And this can include things like adding a new feature, or when you build this project, you build some specific bugs or Swift concurrency issues, right? You can kind of build in what you're looking for in there. But this lends itself to my favorite part of giving the interview and what I found gave me the most signal when talking to a candidate, and that is just talking through the code. That is why I loved giving a take-home project, not necessarily for what they built. I love the take-home project for the next phase of the interview. When I got to sit down with them for an hour, go through their project and say, hey, why did you choose this architecture? Why did you choose to structure the code like this? Why, I want to know the why behind they did things, because we all know in programming, there's many different ways to accomplish the same task. So it's not so much about what they implemented. I want to hear the decision-making behind why. Why do you like SwiftUI's built-in architecture rather than having a view model for every single view? What are the pros and cons of that? That kind of discussion, again, to me, tells me more about the candidate than what they actually code. So this style of here's a very small code base, there's some stuff wrong with it, you can see how they debug, how they think through the problem. I just think this is a really good interview type. That's why I wanted to share it. Now, of course, like I said in the beginning, it's not gonna work for every company, right? What works for Google and Apple is not gonna work for a small startup. But if you are the one doing the hiring, definitely read through this article, see if you can improve your hiring process. And again, if you are the one looking for a job, read through the article because you get the perspective of someone giving the interview, which can be very helpful for you. Next up, we have how AI-assisted coding will change software engineering, the hard truth. The question that we've all been asking for the past 2 years, right, is AI going to take our software developer jobs? Or if I'm just learning, should I even bother learning to become a software dev? Is that career going to be obsolete? I believe the answer is no, and this article goes into, kind of some of the why behind that. So we'll go through some of these points and I'll give my thoughts on it as well. So I'll keep scrolling down here to the headlines. How are developers actually using AI? And I like that he broke it down into 2 categories. The bootstrappers, right? 0 to MVP. Yeah, if you're trying to build a proof of concept, build a super basic app to get validation of the idea to see if you want to build it further, yeah, you can use AI to just scrap something together super fast. Probably don't even need a lot of coding knowledge to do that. However, there's the iterators, which I fall into in my day-to-day use of AI. And by the way, the reason I wanted to share this article too is because as I was reading it, I was like, oh yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. That's exactly my experience. Again, the iterators, that's me, right? You're using AI for code completion and suggestions. You're doing complex refactoring tasks, or for me personally in Swift, I'm working on a podcast app, so I'm not super familiar with maybe like AV audio engine that I'm using to pipe, real-time audio through. So an unfamiliar API like that to me, it has been super helpful for. It can generate tests and documentation and really just use AI as a pair programmer for problem solving. Like, again, I call it like the ultimate rubber duck, because as I'm typing out my super detailed prompt to get a good answer, oftentimes I solve the problem myself because I have to type out such a detailed explanation of what's going on. So it's good for that. But the 70% problem as a whole is basically, the AI can get you 70% of the way there, but that last 30%, that's where being a senior software engineer and knowing actually how to build software really comes into play to get it all the way there. But that's the trick, because typing something in an AI prompt and it getting 70% of the way there feels like magic. But you've built apps, you've built software. If you get something 70% working, that's gonna be a horrible app. It's gonna be buggy, it's not gonna work, it's not gonna scale, it's basically useless. So again, it's a weird illusion almost that this first 70% the AI gives you. And then I'll scroll down. I mean, this is a pretty in-depth article, definitely read it, but I'll point out a couple things too. Also, the hidden cost of AI speed talks about how when you watch a senior engineer work with AI tools, it looks like magic, right? Because they can do stuff so fast. But really what they're doing in their head, because they're a senior engineer, is they're refactoring the generated code into like smaller, more focused modules. They're adding the edge case handling. They're questioning architectural decisions. Because so many times like ChatGPT will give me an answer. I'm like, I don't think that's right. And I'll like kind of point it in the right direction. And it's like, oh yeah, you're right. Here's the right answer. So it does take guidance. And he points out this is kind of the danger of this AI stuff, is because junior engineers often miss those crucial steps, right? The guiding and correcting that the senior engineer does, the junior engineer doesn't have that skill set yet. They just kind of accept AI's output and leading to what I call the house of cards code, right? It looks complete. Maybe it kind of works, but it's gonna collapse under real world pressure. And then the last point, because again, I could go through, point by point, but it'll take too long. Definitely read the article. I might do a whole video about this article separately, but I want to point this out because this is what I have been thinking about lately. Here it is. The return of software as a craft. Because I'm not gonna lie, I see Twitter, I have a little FOMO. I'm seeing all these ChatGPT rappers making all this money, having all this success, and I'm like, dude, I could build that in like a weekend. The typical thing, right? Everyone says that. I could build that in a weekend. But with these ChatGPT rappers, you kind of could. But it has me thinking, it's like, well, how do you compete with that if like everything is just AI based? And it is the return of software as a craft. Because as the App Store becomes flooded with more and more, AI built apps, we're gonna lose out on the, this is especially true in the Apple ecosystem, because I think the Apple ecosystem cares about this more than other platforms, but it's the lost art of polish, and it's the attention to detail, right? The renaissance of personal software, right? As the market gets flooded with AI-generated MVPs, the products that will stand out are those built by developers who you take pride in your craft, you care about the little details. You're building an app that the people that don't know how to code, but like AI can kind of get them by, they're not capable of building this kind of app. So it is almost like the return of the artisanal craftsman, right? The hipster kind of app. And I honestly think, and I've thought about doing this myself, is all these ChatGPT rappers out there steal the idea and make a beautiful Apple ecosystem, like attention to detail, amazing animations, just, those awesome apps that win Apple Design Awards. Put that flavor on top of the ChatGPT wrapper, and I think you can steal a lot of the business that the idea has already been validated. Because again, the people that may not know how to code, but they can whip up a quick ChatGPT wrapper in AI, this is where you can outcompete them, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but that's just how I think about it. Next up, we have an article from David Smith, Accomplish One Thing. And this really hit home with me when it comes to my side projects, like my app creator view. In this article, Dave is actually talking about coming back from a holiday break, or it doesn't have to be the Christmas holiday break, it could be any long break. Maybe you went on a 3-week vacation, whatever, but it always takes a little bit to get back up and running. And he talks about, hey, just accomplish one small thing. He shares this screenshot because that's like all he accomplished one day. And like when you're kind of getting back up to speed, you got to be happy with that, because it's all about building inertia is what he talks about. You build a momentum over a couple days, and then before you know it, you're back up to full speed from your break. Now, of course, this is kind of more geared towards indie dev when you're kind of doing your own thing. If you have a 9-to-5 job, maybe that's a little different. But anyway, the reason I wanted to share it was it made me think of my side projects, because here it is, January 29th. Hopefully you're already back up to speed from the holiday hangover, if you will. But the accomplish one thing rule, because the trap I found myself in with my side project, specifically Creator View, is, I want to work on it, but maybe I only have 30 to 45 minutes at night, or a super small block of time on the weekend. And you know how it is with software development. You're like, what can I really get done in a half hour or 45 minutes? We need big chunks of time to really make progress. And I fell into that trap. And what happens to me is before I know it, I look at the Creative View GitHub and I'm like, I haven't made a commit in like 3 months. Like, what is happening? Nothing's happening, because I fall into that trap of thinking like, I don't have that much time. What am I actually going to get done? So I like this accomplish one thing rule, and just break it up into super bite-sized chunks, because even if you only have an hour and you accomplish one thing, you make small progress. If you do that for 3 months straight, well, you're actually gonna make some decent progress, rather than falling into the trap that I fell into and looking back and being like, I haven't touched Creative View in 3 months. Like, what is happening? Had I just done one little thing every day, I'd still be making great progress. So that really hit home for me when I was reading this article. So I wanted to share it, and maybe it'll help you too. Let's finish off with some indie stuff. And I guess it's not only indie, right? If you work at a small startup and you have some say or influence on how they're, marketing your app and App Store and ASO and all that stuff, this could be helpful for you as well. But how paid campaigns affects your app's organic traffic. And they go hand in hand, right? So ASO, App Store Optimization, if you're not familiar, that is things like keywords or your App Store screenshots, your title and subtitle of your app. Like, it's a whole thing that you need to have right. Just in general, that's how you get organic traffic. That's how you rank on the App Store, but you especially want to get it right before you start any paid campaigns. And think about it, right? It makes sense. If your keywords aren't great, your App Store page sucks, the screenshots are horrible, like, you're just lighting money on fire, directing people to like a crappy App Store page, right? So make sure your App Store page, your keywords are great, your conversion rate, right? Your App Store page is actually converting, and you can see the percentage in App Store Connect. Again, get all that in line. The app presence optimization, I hadn't actually heard that term before, but I know like if you create app events or special offers or you've gotten featured, that also helps with your ASO rankings. But again, the idea is get your shit in order before you start paying money to drive traffic to your App Store page. So that's first and foremost, but let's talk about why paid ads actually improve your organic traffic, because it makes sense, right? You are funneling more traffic through paid ads, and if your App Store page is converting good, then you're gonna get more downloads, and I hope you're asking for ratings either in the onboarding or shortly after onboarding. I know some people don't like to do that, but ratings are the lifeblood of your ASO rankings. The more ratings you have, the higher you will rank in ASO. For example, an app with 7 ratings isn't gonna rank nearly as high as an app with 1,000 ratings. So it's kind of like a flywheel, right? You have your ASO, which is your organic traffic. So that's what we all want, right? We want that organic traffic where we don't have to pay for anything and we're just getting downloads every day and the money's flowing in, right? That's the dream. Well, what the paid ads do is, again, you're getting more downloads, you're getting more ratings, which then feeds into your organic traffic, which again raises you up on the ASO rankings, which leads to more downloads, more ratings, etc. You can see how the flywheel gets going. So that is how paid ads can actually improve your ASO. But I also want to point out, because I know a lot of indie developers think this way, is that they think if I'm gonna pay $100 on an ad, I need to make at least $101 to make it worth it. And I would argue no, especially if you're starting out. It's maybe different if you have a huge app with tons of users already. What I'm about to say may not apply. But in the beginning, yes, you want those downloads, you want those ratings, you're trying to get your ASO kickstarted, but you also probably don't have many users if you're just getting started. So not only are you getting those downloads, those ratings, but now you're actually getting users that can give you that valuable product feedback so you can improve the product, so more people are downloading it and get more ratings, and you can see this flywheel take off. So I wanted to share this to let the developers don't sleep on paid ads, but also remember it's not just about the math problem of the ROI, that you need to make more money than you spend on the ads or else don't do it, because you're getting more value than just the revenue. And if you're here staying up to date on the latest and greatest in iOS development and Swift News, I know you're making amazing apps. And I think it's best to have a website to show off your work, show off what you're building. And that brings me to today's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is an all-in-one platform to help you get that iOS developer portfolio up and running very quickly. Now I know we're developers, we can build a website ourselves, but we're also iOS developers, and I would argue there's an opportunity cost of your time. Now, do you want to spend your time learning about web development, responsive design, all the different browsers, or do you want to spend your time building apps? So that's why I always recommend letting Squarespace take that off your plate to build your iOS developer portfolio. They have all kinds of beautiful themes and templates to get you started, and you can use their next generation website editor with the Fluid engine to just really unlock all the creativity in the world. You can even use Squarespace Blueprint and Squarespace AI to help you figure out what to write on your website, because that's always the hardest part. Like, I don't even know what to say here. Throw it into Squarespace's AI and they'll help you out. They handle all the SEO and analytics for you. Again, Squarespace handling your website just takes so much off your plate. So when you're ready to get started, go to squarespace.com. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/SeanAllen to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.